Welcome into Hold My Banner. Back to business. Also, Kasey Hudson back alongside Ountae Campbell as we watch the Boston Celtics getting in motion, ready for this 2025-26 campaign.
Yeah.
And I got to spend the entire summer talking to you about what could possibly be. Now the time is here.
We're here.
And we are more than back to business because we are seeing press conferences, we are seeing fan expectations. Well, kind of going a little through the roof because of certain things that are being sprinkled into the atmosphere. But What is a season without hope? And that's exactly what Ountae and I are here to break down here on Hold My Banner, starting with this team getting back into business. More importantly, Ountae, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going real well. You know why? Because basketball is back. We got WNBA action tomorrow night. We'll talk a little bit more about that league in a second here. But, you know, I'm just excited because it's basketball season, baseball season. We got a huge game here in Boston. Not in Boston, but, you know, to us Boston people, it is huge to us. We're hoping that we get a playoff game in Boston coming up here over the weekend or so. So, yeah, you know, just exciting times to be a Boston sports fan.
Yeah, and I mean, all the sports going on in October, as you alluded to, now finally getting things moving along here. So to start laying out the season ahead, Ountae and I are going to put some pressure. We're going to apply some pressure points to some players as if they don't have enough already, because we're going to pick particular guys that you need to keep an eye on. Guys that we think, well, you actually need to have a pretty outstanding season. This isn't to say your typical names. This isn't to be like who needs to be the next star of the Celtics franchise. It's just more so if we can get more out of you, or you have the potential to do more to help this team, because there's still so many unknowns regardless of some of the hope that's been trickled out through some of the press conferences. So Ountae, I will let you get this party started. Who do you got on the war board to be like, I need more from you?
Yeah, the most important, I won't say this is my top guy, but he's definitely one that's up there for me, and you'll see a little bit of a trend with the guys that I'm picking. But one of my most important Celtics for this year has to be Chris Boucher. And the reason that I'm bringing up Chris Boucher is because he's coming into that KP role. Now, KP was a crowd favorite here in Boston.
Yeah.
And you're replacing, Drew, Al. Thank you to both of them, 100% favorites. But KP brought something that the Celtics have never really had. A dynamic wing or forward who can guard the three-point line, protect the paint, rebound a little bit, and shoot the ball to half court. Having KP on this team meant a lot to the city of Boston, whether he was available or not. Chris Boucher is now pegged as a guy who has to do those things. So in order for this team to really take shape, especially without a Jason Tatum being there, you're going to need a four-man who can come in there and plug and play. Be a glue guy, make shots, get a couple blocks. There was a time where this dude was a 100 blocks in the season kind of guy.
Right.
Can he get back to that? That's what Boston Celtics fans are looking for. He has an expected increased role from the role that he had with the Toronto Raptors, and with that is going to come increased pressure. So let's see what Chris Boucher does, but, you know, I'm excited to have him here in Boston for sure.
And the big highlight of all of that pressure is going to be replacing a beloved guy such as KB. Somebody that, like, outside of injuries, a lot of fans wanted to hold on dearly to. So, like, now you can't really replace a fan favorite.
No, you can't. You never can. But you can try. What about you? Who's your, I won't say top guy, but who's the guy top of mind for you?
Yeah, because it's not top guy. And I just noticed, Ountae, I contradicted myself a little bit, but that's okay. Things happen. But this one had to be said over and over and over again. Jaylen Brown. I just had to get it out of the way.
Right.
Because you're just talking about the leadership that one needs out of him, but then also the consistent point production. Not saying that he has never been consistent, but it's now that this team needs it more than ever, because he's got to be that guy every single night if this team's going to have a fighting chance, while we start to figure out if everyone else can kind of accumulate and push behind him. So I just went with one of the obvious picks because it's so crucial for this roster, especially if Jason Tatum doesn't get back into the mix this season. Regardless of some of the positives that we're seeing, there's still that question mark of like rushing versus not rushing.
Yeah, and JB is the most important. I think it's, you know, you're completely right by saying that, because he has things that are going to be pegged on him as a scorer. He has things that are going to be pegged on him as a facilitator, as a defender, as a leader. No other guy on this team is being asked to be the best they can.
Of all of it.
Of all four of those categories. So you're 100% right. JB has a lot on his shoulders. And, I kind of felt like you would say JB, because it is, one of the biggest takes, and it's for sure. But Celtics fans already know that. Another guy that I think has been flying under the radar that I want to give some props to, and definitely has a lot on his shoulders and will get a lot of disrespect if he doesn't show up this year, is Baylor Shireman. Look, last year, Baylor was a rookie, and people were forgiving of the fact that, okay, some nights we're going to see Baylor, some nights we're not. He's going to play a lot in Maine. Mm-hmm. A lot of the same things that we talked about this summer with Hugo Gonzalez. So will Baylor Shireman actually improve? Mm-hmm. Will he actually take a leap? Because, development is great when you're doing it in the G League, when you're doing it in spot minutes, when you're doing it on the last regular season game of the year, and you're playing the Charlotte Hornets and they're dead and no one cares, right?
Yes.
But can you show us what you did and put that against real NBA talent? Mm-hmm. What did you actually learn from Jason Tatum last year? What did you actually learn from JB last year? What did you learn from guys like Drew Holiday who was on this team, leading this team last year? They taught you defensive positioning. They taught you how to facilitate. They taught you how to pick your spots. They taught you when to shoot the ball. Now you have to go out there and do that. Summer League was a little shaky for Baylor. It was a little shaky.
I was just about to say, I remember you mentioning him before Summer League to see more out of, because the development has to make sense at some point, or else you're going to forever just be a project.
Right. And in the same way that when Sam Hauser goes 4 for 6, he's great. And when he goes 0 for 5, he's terrible in Boston. It's going to be the same exact thing for Baylor Shireman. He has the opportunity to be a 10-minute to 25-minute guy on this team. He could get up to 25, but he could also easily become a 0 guy where we don't see him at all. It could be a Jordan Walsh taking that reign. It could be a Josh Minot taking those minutes. So he has an opportunity here to solidify his career as an NBA player, not even just as a Boston Celtic. And then he has a big pressure to help this team actually win, because he was here last year. He got to see what a championship team looks like. I know they didn't get there, but he,
Still
championship pedigree.
Yeah.
He has to take that experience, because you can learn while you're playing and you can learn on the bench, and put that to work this year.
Yeah, it's almost do or die, but you don't want to be that dramatic. But if development's not adding up at the right time, then you could cost yourself a career or any sort of longevity, which you're just hoping for basic years at this point sometimes.
Right.
Okay, might be basic again. Again, if I contradicted myself, you didn't hear it. Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah.
And I went here for a number of reasons. You're kind of going from that 6th man and all the responsibility and the excitement and the accountability to pull through when your shoulder gets the tap, but I feel like the responsibility is going to enlarge this season.
Yeah.
And you've seen his numbers creep up as the years have gone by. He was trusted with more minutes on the court last year, which increased his point production, coming in at 14.3 of an average. But I feel like with some of the question marks around this roster, you're going to need a Peyton Pritchard to show up that much more.
Yes.
And he can be more of a complete player. I mean, I've seen some of the things on his profile that says he plays larger than his size, which that always pulls me in, because I feel like those are those dogs out there that you're going to need in the fight.
Yeah.
And Peyton Pritchard's always had that context attached to his name. I think he's ready for that next layer of responsibility, and that this team can maybe pull a little bit more out of him to help out.
I hope you're right, because look, the one thing that I do know about Peyton Pritchard, he's been doubted every single step
of the way.
From the high school to college when he played at Oregon, to coming into the league and being the short white guy, whatever, and playing for the Boston Celtics. And is he going to make it? And is he going to do this? And guess what? He's came out on top every single time, winning 6th Man of the Year last year, and really cultivating that culture that is. He just embodies what Celtics culture is about. He's a grinder. He's a guy that's, been low-key the whole entire time, and now he's shining. That's what you want to see. That's what Boston is about, right? Will he be able to handle the nights where he's 0 for 10, where he's 1 for 9 from 3? Because we've seen it. And when he was the bench guy and he was a role player, and you had JT, you had Derek White, you had JB, you had Drew Holiday, you had Al Horford, you had KP, you had all these names that could show up for you and have the game. We even had a Luke Cornett game, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, everybody had the game, you know what I'm saying, last year, so he could fly under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
No one talks about the deficiencies that he had in the playoffs last year and the years before that. He's always been kind of that guy that hasn't been able to step up to the challenge in the playoffs for whatever reason.
Fully embrace it.
When that happens this year, because there will be some growing pains with that, and there will probably be some nights he starts and there will be some nights that he won't start, will he be able to take the Boston media going from love, love, love to, hey, man, I don't know, Peyton Pritchard isn't this, Peyton Pritchard isn't that.
Yeah.
Inevitably, some Boston Celtics fans will do that. Can he get through that? Can he prevail? Can he find a way to be productive every single night on the offensive end and defensive end? It's hard to do, but he has to figure that out.
Yeah.
Now, for my last guy that I want to shout out with a lot of pressure and definitely something to prove here in Boston, Anthony Simons.
Yeah.
He's got to be an important piece to what this Boston Celtics team does, because everyone's like, oh, well, he doesn't do this on the defensive end. He doesn't do that on the offensive end, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. He's playing for a contract.
Yep.
Because he's in a contract year right now. He's playing for his supremacy. I mean, you're looking around the league, and you look at a Jonathan Kuminga who gets empty calories sometimes. You're looking at a Cam Thomas who gets empty calories sometimes. You're looking at a Quentin Grimes who also sometimes is an empty calorie guy where, yeah, they're getting buckets, but they're not doing it in winning situations. He now has an opportunity to show that he can get buckets in a winning situation and buy into winning. And if he does that, we're talking about a dude who averaged over 20 points last year that's coming into no expectations. According to some of these Boston Celtics fans, they're writing him off like he's going to be gone, he's going to be this, whatever. If he comes in and he averages 20 efficiently for this team and locks in a little bit more on the defensive end and does some of those great things and dives on the floor and is vocal leader and does all of that stuff, do you know how good this Boston Celtics team can be? He has a lot on his plate, but he is a very, very important part to the success of this Boston Celtics team this year.
1,000,000%. I had Anthony as well, and my biggest note was that his goal should to make himself an immovable piece at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Because that's the unfortunate thing that was tied to his name as soon as he got here. We're going to use him as a bargaining chip. We're going to use him as a piece to get somebody else, something different, somebody who has defensive upside, because this kid has no defensive upside. But I feel like, considering some of the storylines that were tied to his name when the trade happened, and it was almost one of these things like, yes, he wanted to move on. He was ready to move on, but it was always coming down to his shoulders. The team wasn't able to prevail because of him. Somehow, regardless of the point production being there, I feel like being in a different environment, having a hype guy like Joe Mazzulla, I feel like this could be one of those chances where it's like everything that's been said about you for the past couple of years, you can make it nonsense with what you do here. And that is why I feel like he is going to be one of the biggest pressured pieces.
And he has a lot to prove in the fact that he's forever tied to Drew Holiday. I mean, Drew Holiday is already a Boston. It was 2 short years, but man,
I'll never forget that picture of his arrival.
Right.
That'll be living in my head for forever. Poor Drew. I still see that sad face.
He looks sad over there in Portland, but he's forever tied there. If he goes over there and Portland starts winning, which could happen, you know, we are throwing out that opportunity or that expectation because we don't think that really could happen. But like, they are one of those teams, nonetheless, that had the youth, had talent, blah, blah, blah. And like, they needed a couple vets, you know what I mean? And now you got Damian Lillard in people's ears over there. Now you got Drew Holiday being an on-court and off-the-court coach kind of situation for this team. So if they were to happen to win 40 games and maybe push for a playoff appearance in the West, and things start to fall apart over here, people are going to be like, well, Drew, blah, blah, blah. We paying Anthony 28, blah, blah, blah. Drew was 30. We should have just kept Drew. We should have did this. We should have did that. So if that's going to be the case, if that's the things that people are going to talk about around here, he has to be able to curve all of that and play well, whether he's off the bench, starting. He's going to be pegged and asked to do a lot of different things, but I guarantee you this, he has to be a star in his role if this team wants to be successful. If he's trash, this whole team is probably trash. I'm just being honest.
Yeah, it's going to be like the thread that just continues to unravel. So he's a key piece at the top there. Really quickly before we cut out to break, because a name that I danced around for a second, we're not going to have a graphic for this one.
No.
Luka Garza. I feel like he's going to have a lot of heat on his back. And it's not because the expectation is high. It's just more so like for his sake. He's getting a lot of disrespect before even getting a chance to say, do, be anything. Yes or no?
You know, we seen Luka for a couple of years in college, and he was, at the time, the best player in college basketball at Iowa. And we were like, oh, my God, he was like Caitlin Clark, you know what I mean? He was taking over, you know, at Iowa.
It was a whole brand.
Yeah. And so, you know, you were sitting there and you're like, man, like, what would this look like in the NBA? And then he got to the Timberwolves. I don't even think that was his first stop. I think Detroit actually was his first stop. And, you're like, okay, this team's not very good. Can he figure it out? And he just never did. I think the athleticism piece of his game was so detrimental to his ability to be a 4-man or a 5-man, which he played in college, in the NBA, that it really shook his identity, right? And he started to figure out a little bit who he was playing with the Timberwolves. He has opportunity now to show what he was figuring out. I don't know if he can be I don't know if he's as bad as people are pegging him to be. I don't know if he's definitely not as good as he was or at least against the competition as good as he was in college. But I think from a scoring perspective, especially with a Boston Celtics team that probably isn't going to be as great defensively this year, he can probably fill it up just a little bit. I could foresee Luka Garza coming in and averaging 10 to 12 points a game. Okay. Shooting about upper 30s to maybe low 40s from 3. Okay. Us complaining about what he does on the defensive end. And, being somewhat happy with that, Yeah. So I think he has a good opportunity here, but I don't think he's as important as the 5, right? 5 guys that we just named. So, but, this whole team, obviously everybody has to chip in. Yeah. Because when you lose a guy of Jason Tatum's stature, it's not just one guy who's going to do it.
It's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a theme we know quite well. So we will see how these guys continue to rally as the season gets ready to press upon us. Don't go anywhere. We got a quick break coming up here on Hold My Banner. But in the stretch of the show, Jay King joining us to continue to give us some insight into the Celtics' upcoming season, get into some WNBA, as well as a preview to wrap things up. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us on the other side of this quick break. Welcome back into Hold My Banner. Kasey Hudson, Ountae Campbell, now joined by Jay King, Celtics staff writer for The Athletic. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to quickly hop on with us and break things down. We always talk about guests helping us temper expectations. And, well, we have a lot of expectations that we're running through. So how are you to start things off?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. Now, the first thing that I have to bother you about, Jay, because press conferences, they always give you either a lot of hope or a lot of despair. Well, when you find out that Jason Tatum is stealing Brad's treadmill, you start to get a lot of hope, obviously. So I need a realistic take on, what this does for team morale, but more importantly, what the reality should be upon his potential return and whether that return should happen this upcoming season.
Yeah, look, is it realistic that he returns sometime this season? Maybe. It would be 9 months in February, which is around the All-Star break. Historically, not everybody has returned that quickly, but some guys have. And everything you've heard about Jason Tatum's surgery, his recovery, has been optimistic. He got the surgery the day after the injury happened, which apparently makes a pretty big deal in the recovery to do it that quickly. Everybody has raved about how diligent he has been in his work since then. And Jason Tatum, he has for years done whatever he could to try to get on the court, no matter who they're playing, no matter what the situation is. So you can imagine that after an 8-9 month absence, he's going to be fighting the Celtics to get back as quickly as possible. They need to be smart about it. But I think, if he does get to the point where he's 100%, then I don't think there's a point to holding him out for the rest of the season just because. But he has to get there first. And even if he does come back this season, I think there's very little chance that we see the Jason Tatum that we're used to seeing on the court this season. He'll be on a minutes restriction. He won't be as athletic probably as we're used to seeing him. And it's going to take a while to knock off that rust and get back to full strength.
Peyton Pritchard makes it sound like he's going to be back immediately and killing. He said, what he said. He says that he's going to come back even better, but, it will take some time. I definitely agree with that. What will not take some time is how we figure out when this team is going to be a good team or a bad team. I think we're going to kind of know pretty quickly how good this team is. But what do you think the Celtics' biggest strength is going into the season with this iteration of the team?
They're perimeter players. They still have championship-proven players on the perimeter. Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard. That's the core of the team right now. throw Sam Hauser in there if you want. And then with Anthony Simons being acquired, like there's still a lot of shooting, a lot of playmaking on this roster. Now the front court is a total issue and an enormous question mark, but I think you can really trust those smaller guys, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Joe Mazzulla adjusts the play style. All the talk from the first couple of days of training camp is that they want to play fast, they want to get up into people. They have had a tough camp from the sound of it, and they're going to ramp up the pace, and I think they're going to lean a lot on those smaller guys.
I love that you mentioned that there's still a lot of talent on this team, because I feel like that kind of gets forgotten, obviously, with all of the air being taken out of Boston behind Jason Tatum's injury and just kind of trying to accept that you might potentially not see him for another year. But I always love to ask about an underdog, because sometimes surprises come in completely different packages. And while there are some now new faces to this team or unknown figures, do you have an underdog or two on your radar that, we can keep an eye out for, add to the hope pile?
I think Luka Garza is an interesting one. If you look at his per minute stats, like he's been very productive when he's been on the court. I know he has some serious defensive limitations, and that has kept him off the court in Minnesota so far. He was behind some great players in Minnesota. He wasn't just sitting behind scrubs. It was Rudy Gobert, Karl Towns, Julius Randle, Naz Reid, all guys who are very, very talented. And so he's been waiting for this opportunity. I think he'll get one. And I think he could surprise some people with how productive he is. If you look at his advanced stats with offensive rebounding, he's been one of the best offensive rebounders since he stepped into the NBA. Obviously, that's been in very limited minutes and not the highest leverage minutes. But I think he's got a chance to surprise some people. And then you look at the younger guys with Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Josh Minott. Those guys will all have their chances, because after Jaylen Brown and Sam Hauser, there's really like a lack of wings on this roster, and I think there's opportunity there. I don't know which of those guys will step up, but they're going to need one of them at least.
So, look, you're talking about wings, you're talking about front court. You don't seem like you're very excited about either of those things. But what would you say, people are wondering what the biggest downfall to the Celtics could be this year. What would you say the biggest weakness is for this team?
Yeah, I would say the front court. Everyone talks about the center position, and I think the guys are unproven there. But Neemias Queta, like, we've seen him be productive. We've seen him be okay in minutes with the Celtics. He was a fourth-string center last season. Now he might be the starter. So it's going to be a huge change in role. But I think he and Luka Garza have done enough in their very limited minutes. I think you feel okay about that, actually. It's power forward that I might have the biggest question marks about. Do you go small with Sam Hauser? How bad are you going to be rebounding if you do that? Do you go with Chris Boucher? He's started 23 games in his career. He's nearly 33 years old. Do you go with Xavier Tillman? Like, you didn't really want to play him last year. He dealt with knee issues throughout the whole season. That was an issue. If he's healthy, then he's a very good defender who can do a lot of different things, bring the versatility that you lost with Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Cornett leaving. But I just think what they do at power forward is going to be interesting. To me, I would go small. I would start Sam Hauser. But I just think you're so vulnerable at that point, playing that small. You're vulnerable on the glass. But I think that's why they want to play much faster, because they are going to be small, and they're going to have to play faster to kind of overcome their limitations as a roster. This is by far the worst defensive roster that Joe Mazzulla has ever coached.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And I love that you brought up Queta. And I asked John Corrales, who was one of our previous guests earlier this summer, about Queta, because I know you're probably, paying attention to Euro Cup and looking at those things. And you see him out there making the shot. He made a three. He stepped out to 15-foot, made a 15-footer. Not this year. I'll look to more towards the future. Do you think we could see Queta kind of becoming a little bit more of a stretch big, like we saw how Al Horford kind of transitioned to that later on in his career? Maybe even a Brook Lopez, who never took a three when he was in Brooklyn, and then kind of transitioned into that later on in his career. Could you see that kind of transition happening for Queta?
Obviously, it's something that he puts in a lot of time at, and it's something that he wants to add to his game. The difference between him and Al Horford, Al Horford was always a very good mid-range shooter. He just had to expand his range, whereas Nemi, everything has been close to the basket so far. So Do I expect him to shoot threes this year? Not really. Joe Mazzulla was on, I believe it was a radio yesterday, saying they don't have a stretch big right now. And that's a huge difference between their roster now, their roster last season. I don't think he expects Nimi to shoot many threes this year. I don't think he really expects too many of their guys to shoot a lot of threes, although Luka Garza has shot them. Hasn't necessarily made them, but he shot them in the past. They're going to have to adapt because, with Al Horford, with Kristaps Porzingis, every single person they put out there could shoot threes, with the probable exception of Luke Cornett. And now you don't have that anymore. Your bigs are going to be more traditional, and I think they'll be actually a much better offensive rebounding team with Nimi and Luka Garza. But you're going to have to figure out new ways to score without Jason Tatum and without those stretch bigs.
All right, Ountae mentioned not getting too far into the future. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to bring the future in a little too quickly here. You've got some guys that are on the bubble that should be starting off in the G League, Shugla and then Junior. But I wonder if there's any guys that stand out to you that are kind of on the cusp that can eventually be a good pillar for this team or an impactful player for this team. Because sometimes when you have such unknown rosters as the Celtics could potentially be dealing with going into this season, opportunities present themselves and development becomes a key focus there versus trying to really go for any push during this upcoming season.
Yeah, I would put Hugo Gonzalez as the one there. He's obviously their first round pick, but he's really young. Didn't play a lot of minutes last season on Real Madrid, his former team. They had a ton of former NBA players, including Facu Campazzo and Serge Ibaka. And there were when you're a teenager in that ecosystem for a team that good in Europe, you're probably not going to be playing minutes unless you're like Luka Doncic. He's not Luka Doncic, but he intrigues me because he plays super hard. He has that competitive fabric you want, and he's pretty skilled for a guy who is about 6'7". So I want to see how Ugo develops. I think, if they hit on a guy like that, then it's going to make a big difference down the line. And I don't think he'll play much for the Celtics this year. We saw some serious ups and downs even in summer league, though he was coming right off his Spanish season and probably shouldn't be judged off that. I just think, from a competitive standpoint and from a size skill standpoint, he's really intriguing to me long term.
He's definitely very intriguing. He has a long way to go. There's some other guys that have a long way to go for this Boston Celtics team as well. Who needs to step up the most? Like, who needs to take the biggest jump from what we've actually seen from their basketball playing career to this season in order for this team to be successful?
So I don't really think he has to take a big jump. I just think he has to do it differently, and that's Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, he's been a great scorer for the Celtics. He's been the Finals MVP. He's done a ton of great things for the Celtics. I just think without Jason Tatum, he's going to have more pressure on him to free up other guys. And I want to see how that looks. On my podcast, I have repeatedly mentioned this one kind of random stat. But when Jason Tatum was off the court last season, Jaylen Brown assisted almost 10 times per 100 possessions on teammates' baskets. And that's a really good number. That's a number that's about double what he did when Jason Tatum was on the court. So I think the playmaking might surprise some people. I think the assist numbers might surprise some people. And everybody's looking at it like the number one option. He's going to have to score more. And I think, yeah, that's probably the case to some extent. But to me, it's like, can you get Nimi easy buckets? Can you get Luka Garza easy buckets? Can you make the game easier for Anthony Simons and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, guys who used to rely on Jason Tatum to do a lot of that for them? And I'm excited to see Jaylen with this new opportunity. I think he's excited for it, and I think he'll approach it the right way and try to, be a winning basketball player rather than just trying to get his stats up.
I love it. Let's talk Anthony Simons for a minute, because when you're coming in the way that he did, I feel like too many people quickly wrote him off and said, let's package him in a trade deal and just move on, because some fans were just kind of ready to blow up this roster and foresee into the future. Is there a way that you feel confident that he's going to make himself an immovable piece for this Boston Celtics team? Because I think he's looking for a new home. I think he's ready to be that guy where the expectations have been on him for his entire NBA career, but now probably has the ability to do it with less noise, even though the Boston market is going to apply the pressure.
Yeah, he's in an interesting spot in his career because he used to be the golden boy sort of for Portland. And And obviously they just traded him for Drew Holiday, he's Drew Holiday, fantastic player, but he's 35 with $104 million left on his contract. So that kind of speaks to where Portland saw Anthony Simons. On an expiring contract, he needs to prove not that he can score. Everyone knows that he can score. Everyone knows that he's been a very good offensive player. He needs to show he can contribute to winning and defend at a much higher level. And I think it's a really good opportunity for him to do that. He seems to be taking the right approach to it. At media day, he stressed like 5 or 6 times, I want to contribute to winning. When asked if he wanted to start, said he didn't care. He just wants to contribute to winning. And I think, he should feel the pressure to show that he can defend at a much higher level. Some of the stats show that he's been one of the worst defenders in the NBA throughout his time in the league. And I don't know if it's that bad. Joe Mazzulla has told him he's not as bad as people believe he is, but he's a weak link defensively, and he needs to change that. And, especially in Boston, where the culture has been that they've been a great, great defensive team, they don't put up with weak links on that end. And so he's got to prove it there.
All right, I'll leave you with this, Jay. I asked a 2-part question, and I'll get you out of here, all right? Look, first of all, you bring up Anthony Simons, and a lot of the talk around him here in Boston is trade. Trade deadline is going to come. Everybody's wondering what this team is going to do. Do you think that there's going to be a big move happening for this Boston Celtics team at the trade deadline? And the second part of this question is, what do you think the ceiling of this Boston Celtics team is? Like, do you think this team actually can be a contender and make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals? Or do you think this is a team that really their ceiling is the playoffs and that's about it?
So with regard to the ceiling, I think it's pretty high if they stay healthy, but they have to stay healthy. This isn't last year where you could lose Kristaps Porzingis for half the season and still thrive. They don't have that depth anymore. They don't have that, you're not bringing Peyton Pritchard off the bench and giving him more opportunity. Like, he's going to be one of your main guys now. So if Jaylen Brown misses extensive time, they're going to fall apart. They are. But as long as they stay healthy, they could win close to 50 games. They could win a round or two in the playoffs. That wouldn't shock me. But yeah, for trades, I don't think adding a important piece is probable. I would say, if anything, they could look to get under the luxury tax. Right now, they're about $12 million over the luxury tax threshold. To get under that would take, probably trading Simons, shedding a lot of salary in that move or subsequent moves. But yeah, that could be something they do. But it all depends on what the market is, how Simons does for them. And there's a lot of moving pieces right now and a lot of things for Brad Stevens to consider.
The state of the team at the time, 100%. A lot of moving pieces.
A lot of moving pieces and a lot of questions to still be answered, which keeps us all on the edge of our seat. But at this point, I feel like that's the Boston theme. Continue to sweat and hold your breath. We'll all be doing it tonight for the Red Sox game. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Hold My Banner. Make sure you guys catch more Celtics insight from Jay King over at The Athletic. Going to another quick break here, jumping in to the WNBA. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on Hold My Banner.
Thank you all for your time today. I have prepared a statement that I would like to make before taking any questions. All right. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Mercury for advancing to the finals. And I want to be clear, this conversation is not about winning or losing. It's about something much bigger. The real threat to our league isn't money, it isn't ratings, or even missed calls, or even physical play. It's the lack of accountability from the league office. Since I've been in the league, you've heard the constant concerns about officiating, and it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity in which it operates. Whether the league cares about the health of the players is one thing, but to also not care about the product we put on the floor is truly self-sabotage. Year after year, the only thing that remains consistent is the lack of accountability from our leaders. Sorry, I had to walk here in my boot. I'm kind of out of breath. The league has a buzzword that they've rolled out as talking points for the CBA as to why they can't pay the players what we're worth. That word is sustainability. But what's truly unsustainable is keeping a good product on the floor while allowing officials to lose control of games. Fans see it every night. coaches, both winning and losing, pointed out every night in pregame and postgame media. Yet leadership just issues fines and looks the other way. They ignore the issues that everyone inside the game is begging to be fixed. That is negligence. At Unrivaled this past February, I sat across from Cathy and asked how she planned to address the officiating issues in our league. Her response was, well, only the losers complain about the refs. I also asked how she planned to fix the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel, and Paige, who are clearly driving massive revenue for the league, are making so little for their first 4 years. Her response was, Caitlin should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. And in that same conversation, she told me players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them. That's a mentality driving our league from the top. We go to battle every day to protect a shield that doesn't value us. The league believes it succeeds despite its players, not because of them. I have the privilege of watching my husband run a league where he has to balance 100 different things at once. I won't pretend the job is easy, but even with all of that on his plate, he always takes the time to reach out to players when he sees an injury, whether it's Unrivaled or even during the WNBA season. That is what leadership looks like. It's the human element. It's basic integrity, and it's the bare minimum any leader should embody. This year alone, I've gotten calls, texts, and well wishes from so many players across the league. Those moments remind me that sometimes there are things bigger than the results than this game we play. But do you know who I haven't heard from? Cathy. Not one call, not one text. Instead, the only outreach has come from her number 2 telling my agent that she doesn't believe physical play is contributing to injuries. That is infuriating, and it's the perfect example of the tone-deaf, dismissive approach that our leaders always seem to take. I've finally grown tired. For too long, I have tried to have these conversations in private, but it's clear there is no intention of accepting there's a problem. The league has made it clear it isn't about innovation, it isn't about collaboration, it's about control and power. I've earned this platform and I've paid the price to get here, and now I have a responsibility to speak on behalf of the fans and everyone in this league that deserves better. Our leadership's answer to being held accountable is to suppress everyone's voices by handing out fines. I'm not concerned about a fine. I'm concerned about the future of our sport. At some point, everyone deserves to hear the truth from someone who I hope has earned the benefit of the doubt to fight for what is right and fair for our athletes and our fans. We have the best players in the world. We have the best fans in the world. But right now, we have the worst leadership in the world. If I didn't know exactly what the job entailed, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. But unfortunately for them, I do. We serve a league that has shown they think championship coaches and Hall of Fame players are dispensable, and that's fine. It's professional sports. But I will not stand quietly by and allow different standards to be applied at the league level. Thank you.
Well, and Cathy has a response to probably one of the most eloquent and leadership voices in the WNBA. Let's just say this, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert's response is, I have the utmost respect for Napheesa Collier and for all the players in the WNBA. Together, we have all worked tirelessly to transform this league. My focus remains on ensuring a bright future for the players and the WNBA, including collaborating, everyone stick to that word for a second, on how we continue to elevate the game. I am disheartened by how Napheesa, characterized our conversations and league leadership. But even when our perspectives differ, my commitment to the players and to this work will never waver. That's brass to respond to Napheesa Collier and to basically try to say, we're collaborating. We're all about collaboration. I'm disheartened by the characterization. I'm shocked that she was so transparent of the conversations. That's what I heard. Right. Because here's the thing. It's tough enough to speak up on something. It's tough enough to go to bat for yourself. And to double down, triple down, and to have more than 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 players coming out about it, the light really shines on the fact that there's no collaboration and that this is not a mischaracterization. And when you hear key words such as any sort of reference to somebody being a loser to complain about something, that's a character default, number one. Yep. Should be grateful. When that's used in any sentence, you're writing somebody off. I've given you enough. This is plenty. What else could you need? When Grateful enters the chat, you already feel like you have fulfilled your duties. That is what that statement implies. And then physical play not contributing to injuries. I just don't know what sport you watch and think physical play doesn't contribute to injuries unless the highlight says non-contact injury.
Right.
Clearly, I have a lot of feelings about this, but I can't emphasize enough how much V just polished it so perfectly. What did you make of this, Ountae?
I made everything that you made out of it and more. Look, I know you're having a lot of thoughts, and I always have a lot of thoughts every time. This is like my fourth, fifth time watching this, but as we sit down and watch this clip together. My main thing that I take away from this is just the disrespect for the person. You can think those things about how you've made the WNBA money, which you have, because players have gone from averaging $28,000 a year or whatever in salary to over $100,000 a year, and they have planes now that actually, charter flights to get them from point A to point B.
League's expanding, which you need money to do
and
that.
all this other stuff, and that's all great from a business perspective.
Right.
But these are real people with real feelings and real things attached to this. Napheesa got hurt in that game. I believe it was game 4 of the WNBA semifinals that she got hurt in, and it lost her team the opportunity to go on and win. Or I think it was game 3 actually that she got hurt in. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that she got hurt from a play that shouldn't have happened because the refs weren't taking care of controlling the game early on. So somebody got out of control, she got hit and put in the position, and now she's out. Now she's not only out for her WNBA team, trying to help her WNBA team, but she is also a co-founder of a league, Unrivaled.
Yeah.
And that league now doesn't have its figurehead playing in these games and is going to miss time because these things happen, right? Because they didn't take care of the ref situation, which he talked to her about last summer, what she was saying. And now Napheesa is saying, like, hey, you didn't even care to reach out to me. Like,
Right.
You're a commissioner. I'm a co-founder of a league. If anything, we're kind of business partners because our product hinges on the same thing, these players and their availability to our league and the product that they put on.
Yeah.
And you didn't even care to reach out, and then your second, number 2, is reaching out being like, oh, well, this and this and that. No one wants to hear that. If I'm hurt, I don't want to hear, well, it wasn't this person's fault. I just want to hear you say, I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Right.
And we can move on.
Right.
But because you don't care about the person and because you're worried about maybe some lawsuit or something else, you're going to go out there and put out a statement and say, oh, well, coaches and refs don't affect, and physical play doesn't affect this, blah, blah, blah. That's an insane thing to write to her. And then to go out there and write that message, and then put out an official WNBA message, and you don't even stick up for yourself.
Yeah.
You write one word saying mischaracterization.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's not enough. I haven't really been a fan of Cathy. I haven't been a fan of Adam Silver as well because of the business and how they treat the leagues like a business, but have cultural impact. Their players matter. Their voices matter, and they don't only matter when they want to stick up for the social justice things that you want them to talk about. They matter when they're feeling the way that Napheesa's feeling. And for a top 3 player in the WNBA, however you want to slice it, to come out there and say that, I applaud her, and I'm so proud that she went out there and put herself on the line and maybe even her WNBA career on the line to say what needs to be said.
Yeah.
Shout out to her.
What you do on the day-to-day is way more important to how and when you decide to show up, especially for bigger moments.
Right.
Anybody can show up for bigger moments. It's what you do in the in-between.
Right.
And why this stands out to me even more, and this isn't to kind of throw any sort of shade by any means, it's more so the fact of, like, if this was Caitlin Clark that made this statement at this moment, sure, there'd be maybe some wavered opinions to a degree because we've heard a more vocal Caitlin Clark over this previous season, right? You're talking about one of the more level-headed leaders in the WNBA when it comes to someone who doesn't come off complaining off the cuff for no reason, someone who I feel like would try to reason and understand the business side as somebody who has ownership, skin in the game.
Right.
You're talking to one of the most understanding people, and you still had zero accountability, zero empathy, zero compassion, and honestly, zero collaboration. To even put that in a statement was shocking to me. Shocking to me.
Yes.
And this just speaks to misleaded leadership, but also the lack of credibility that already kind of drips disdain from all of this.
Right.
Do you feel like the credibility can go even further south? Because there may be an opportunity here to try to bring some correction, but I mean, season's coming to an end here shortly. And at this point, if I'm a player, I'm not looking to you for much hope.
Yeah. I mean, I think all credibility is going away. And I think even when you see this statement that, you know, is coming out from the Sports Business Journal saying that Cathy Engelbert is likely to exit as WNBA commissioner after the CBA negotiations, it shows that, like, that she's one, the quote says she hasn't connected, she's not a relationship builder. Like, yeah, but they're going to keep her until the CBA is over because that's business, right? Well, she's a businesswoman. She does that. She'll help figure out the business side of it. But then after that, we have to find somebody who's more compassionate. Look, this is what I'll say about this. I would challenge the WNBA and its partners and all this other stuff in the NBA, because I'm sure they have a role in this, and the owners and all this other stuff, to find somebody who's a former player who can do the actual commissioner side, which is taking care of the players, making sure that the owners and GMs and all this other stuff are happy, right?
Right.
And then building that relationship, and then having the people who are under them be the business people that handle the business side and help them understand what it means from a national standpoint, from a global standpoint, and all of that jazz. Find somebody who has actually played in these games, and that will help them move forward.
Now, this brings me to a bridge question here before we get out. Do you think that a new person will at least be able to better utilize the economic value of the rising stars, rather than looking at them as people that are complaining too much and not being grateful enough, because that's really all I got from that? You're seeing them put the brand on their back to helping add value and revenue, because now you're in a time where brand movement is bigger than ever. You have to be able to manage it accordingly. You can't use old business tactics for new branding.
Yeah, you definitely do. I think the league could definitely use these superstars in a better light. I'm not one to sit here right now and tell you I know exactly what that is, but their voices need to be heard. I see these women all the time. If I, get on a podcast or something like that, I might hear from them, but I think their voices and like the things that they care about truly and deeply will help this league grow, because when you hear about the LeBron James, when you hear about the Steph Curry, when you hear about the Jason Tatum, you start to see their real personalities and who they are and who their families are and all that other stuff, and that it gets you ingrained into their league, and that gets you ingrained to their teams, and then from there, you're like, oh yeah, I'm an NBA fan because I love Steph Curry and I love his family and I love this, but we have to learn those stories. The WNBA has to do a better job of pushing that out.
Honestly, I can't add anything to that. That is the most polished way to mention it. Let's get further in with the females of the WNBA, because they really are sitting here and putting in all of the grunt work to make sure that this league continues to find success and growth. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on Hold My Banner. We got a preview for you on the other side before we get out of here. We'll catch you guys on the other side of the break. Let's dive into the Atlantic Division for a quick little preview. We're going to find out what the Toronto Raptors are up to. Oh, actually, look no further. Straight to work.
Straight to work.
That's what they're doing. They're putting in the work. Scottie Barnes is ready to focus.
He is.
He's all in. And one has to be when your win total is projected at, what, 39-ish?
39 and a half is what Vegas got right now.
39-ish.
39.5.
Did you blink at that? Did you sigh at that? Did you exhale? What did you feel when you're like 39 and a half for Toronto?
I want to say I can guarantee they ain't going over that.
Oh, my gosh.
No, I mean, this Eastern Conference is somewhat depleted. We miss Jason Tatum. We miss Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton. We missing a couple people over here in the East. And so
the whole Atlantic Division is the Wolverine holding a picture, but like it's a group picture.
Right.
honestly. Okay.
And so, when I'm looking at this team, it's like the same questions that we go into every year with this team. Can they stay healthy? Is R.J. Barrett going to make a leap? Is Scottie Barnes going to make a leap? Can their rookies that they drafted do anything to help this team? They lost Chris Boucher. He's over here with
He's
us
here.
now.
Yeah.
They're a young team that is expensive and just hasn't really figured it out. Jakob Poeltl, who has been there for forever, has been a staple in the steadiness, and he's been doing that. But Emmanuel Quickly is an unknown. R.J. Barrett is an unknown. Brandon Ingram, can you stay healthy? Scottie Barnes, can you stay healthy? I don't want to ask this about every single dude on your team.
Right.
Literally every single dude on their team is I don't know. What are they going to do? So I can't put any stock into this team being that much better than they were last year. 39 is a stretch for me. I could see them maybe winning 36, 35 games this year.
And is that you being
Yes.
hopeful, and nice, 36,
that is.
35?
It really is. It really is, because even them going and get Maurice Boyle in the draft last year from South Carolina over this past summer, that was a head scratcher. No one knows if he's going to fit with that team. They have a lot of bigs over there. He doesn't really fit what they do. It's a lot of questionable decisions. So, I'm not really excited to watch this team, and that obviously conveys and comes through.
Honestly, I heard that they're too expensive for themselves. It's like the people that go out there and put in the payment plan. You feel like you can afford it for a minute, but then before you know, your pocket's still hurting.
Exactly.
Health being a factor, maybe this is a time where this team can start to find their strides, because that's what needs to happen first in terms of solidifying an identity, being on a healthy side. If you got a guy like Scottie Barnes who's at least rallying behind the idea of something more coming down the pipeline, you're seeing leadership qualities in an expensive team that's not giving up. That says enough for now.
Yeah, I like Scottie Barnes. I think he's a good player. Hopefully he can lead this team, but you're asking a fourth, fifth-year player to lead a team. It is a tall task, but we've seen it done before throughout the NBA's history. But the maturity thing for him has to step up now. So we'll see what happens. That's all I got to say. They don't have many leaders in the room. They got to find them quick.
All right, so let's just look forward to some development potentially while the Atlantic Division continues to find their fractured pieces. Come back home to them. That's a wrap for Ountae Campbell and myself here on Hold My Banner, but you guys know where to find Hold My Banner every single week. Everyone enjoy their weekend until next week.
Deuces!